Hi, welcome back to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. I'm Doug O'Brien, your host, and today I'm joined by Jamie Smart. Jamie is the Sunday Times bestselling author of Clarity and Results. Jamie is a gift for cutting through mental noise and helping people find the calm and insight that leads to real breakthroughs. He's worked with everyone from business coaches to business leaders to coaches and all sorts of people. He's a public speaker. I'm excited to dive into his take on the book Clarity and what he means by all that today on the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. You are listening to the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Hey, Jamie Smart, welcome to the program.
Doug O'Brien, good to see you, man.
Good.
I was listening to your intro. I'm excited for our conversation because I know we share lots of common interests.
Indeed, we do. And gosh, it's been a long time since I've seen you, and you're looking in a very field of green. You're a very green place today. Is that supposed to be a visual background besides the green screen? I'm just curious.
So I use a green screen when we're doing Zoom webinars and that sort of thing, and there's a different color on it. But StreamYard just likes to go native on this.
Yes, we're using my
Native
platform, not
green.
his platform, so it's just a green screen. We could maybe do something in post with this. That might be kind of
It's
amusing.
up to you, but I know you and I share a passion for single takes, so I'll be very
We definitely
happy
do.
to present
Yeah,
that.
I'm not going to correct my mistakes in the intro. I'm just going to. That's fine. That's just
Yeah,
good.
it's a
I,
feature.
it's yes, right, exactly. Yeah, that's one of the features of the Doug O'Brien podcast. He always makes mistakes. It's beautiful. Hey, so for the people who don't know what Clarity is all about, your book on Clarity, could you just give us a kind of overview of what this book is about, the book Clarity? Because it's a Sunday Times best-selling book. It's a great book. I enjoyed reading it very much when it came out a few years ago. I understand the second edition has just come out, so let's talk about that.
Yeah, well, and so the book Clarity. Quick backtrack. As you know, when you and I first met many years ago, I was an NLP trainer, passionate
Yeah.
about NLP and hypnosis, and
Hmm.
still love everything I explored in that domain. And when I was, I guess it was 2007, I read the book The 4 Hour Work Week by Tim
Okay.
Ferriss.
Yeah.
And his whole thing was get your business running on autopilot and go around the world having mini retirement. So I thought that's what I need to do. So in 2008, I went on my first mini retirement to Whistler in Canada. And I was
Oh.
on a ski holiday. And my whole idea was that that was going to be brilliant. It would be peak fulfillment and happiness and all that sort of stuff. And 6 weeks in, I had sore feet and was kind of miserable. And I was like, well, what's wrong with this picture? Like, according to the rules of my industry and the 4 Hour Work Week and that sort of thing, I should be smashing it. So I went back to the drawing board. And what I discovered was that I had been working within a framework, if you like, which we could summarize as I'll be happy when. I'll be happy, satisfied, fulfilled, whatever. I'll be
Hmm.
happy when I make X amount of money, when I achieve X, when I get the right relationship, when I get the right life circumstances.
Right.
And what I realized was, oh, everything. Well, I had several realizations. The first realization I had, Doug, was I realized, oh, everything you've been looking for outside of you is already there within you. Now, I don't mean practical stuff like shoes and steaks and phones, but I mean like the experience of peace, clarity, resilience, confidence, well-being. It's already there within us. It's built in. So I kind of discovered that for myself.
Hmm.
The second realization I had was that the fact that people can even see or hear or perceive means they have a source of clarity, resilience, well-being, realization already there within them, which is
Hmm.
something. When I was working in the field of NLP, we had this idea of people have all the resources they already need within them,
Sure.
and we're told,
Yeah.
that's a useful presupposition. I went from it being a useful presupposition to realizing, like, oh no, that's a pre-existing fact. of being a human. Um, and at a certain point, I realized, oh, these are principles. This understanding is to psychology what the discovery of germs was to medicine. So at that point, I kind of went all in and started exploring. And that's what clarity is. It's a, the, it's a, you can think of clarity as a metaphor for our innate capacity for resilience, insight, peace of mind, confidence, creativity, innovation, all of that are, you know, those highly valued states and experiences and qualities.
All right.
So
So
that's like,
is it a process that you do to work with people, that you do a clarity process with someone, or is clarity like the end state? After you've done a bunch of processes, you arrive at clarity?
great question. My way of describing it is clarity is an innate capacity. It's an
Hmm.
innate capacity we have for all those highly valued qualities, whether, you know, confidence, peace of mind, etc. And then the process of uh, a person finding their way into that experience is actually entirely natural. So it's why something like, you know, the flow states described by Csikszentmihalyi, there's nothing you can do to guarantee a person goes into a flow state, but people will go into them. So it's
Right.
the reason people go into flow states is because it's an expression of a pre-existing capacity. Now, speaking to you as a coach and as a change worker, my job, if you like,
Yeah.
is to guide people into that space of clarity. And I teach other coaches and therapists to do that as well, because what I've found is that uh, whether you want to call it a state, I think of it more as an understanding
Yeah.
that gives rise to those emergent properties, that turns out to be just an incredibly leveraged resource for helping people solve the problems, make the changes they want to make, accomplish the things they want to accomplish. Interesting example, I went many years ago and trained with John Grinder, who was at the time doing his new code games. And he was talking about something, and he was like, you do these new code games, and then people have this experience. And so the new code games, as I understood it, were a process for helping people access this state. The work I'm doing is using a slightly different entry point, which is saying that while there's a process of coaching people with this, the thing that's going to make a go forward difference to an individual is their embodied understanding of two things. The first one is how experience is created, which we can talk about.
Okay.
And the second one is who they really are. So, would it be worth me jumping into both of those?
Well, let me just ask you a couple questions before that. Um,
Shoot.
Because yeah, absolutely, it would be worth you jumping into those. That's what we're talking about. But just what you were just saying, it's. I want to get some clarity about what we're talking about here, because I'm getting the feeling that, and I might have actually come to this years ago when I read your book, is that clarity is it just kind of a natural state that we're in unless we screw it up. So
Bingo.
that Yeah, so that it's like clear water unless you stir up the sand at the bottom, and then it gets cloudy, and
Yeah, very
then
much so.
yeah.
Like
Okay.
happiness is so easy a baby can do it.
So what's the difference between clarity and like mindfulness or mindset training or something?
Yeah, great question. Mindfulness and mindset training, they're a practice, if you like. There's something
Okay,
to do.
I
Um,
see.
Whereas clarity is a natural state. The no, I'm not dissing mindset or mindfulness trainings, because
It's
those can be
okay. You
useful.
you can
Those can
you
be
can. We
useful.
put it on record that Jamie
Yeah,
Smart disses mindfulness, and we can
let
put
it
it
let
here
it
at
let the record
24
reflect.
at
But
9:40 in the thing, and yeah,
but the point is that anything which reinforces the idea that your most fundamental qualities are an achievement actually makes them harder to access.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So it's there in a way we're dealing
Yeah.
with some very fundamental beliefs. Like it's kind of interesting, Doug. There are certain skills that you and I have both developed. So hypnotic language, sleight of mouth, those sort of things. Those are skills, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Whereas peace of mind, happiness, love, and connection, those aren't skills, those are pre existing capacities. But what people tend to do, and what much of the self help literature tends to do, is to present pre existing capacities as skills.
Hmm. That's
They're
interesting.
not skills. Now,
Yeah.
and by the same token, you'll hear people say things like, oh, I'm just not a public speaker. It's like, no, no, public speaking isn't a pre existing capacity. That's a skill. It's
Yeah.
like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm just not a storyteller. It's like, no, no, yes, you are. Storytelling is a skill. It's not a pre existing capacity, even though
Right.
it
Right.
leverages some inbuilt stuff. So we
Oh,
tend to have
exactly.
those two categories back to front.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I like your analogy actually with Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's flow and finding flow. My wife actually did a lot of work with him when she was working at Lincoln Center, is still working at Lincoln Center, but when he was also there, the idea that flow is a natural state that
Yeah.
we naturally get into, and that's, I think, frankly, that flow is more important than our pursuit of happiness. Happiness is like so ephemeral and like
Yeah.
what does that mean exactly, but flow is like work is flow. When you're not working, you're just flowing with it. It's just like filling you up in your capacity. You're just filled with it, and I think that is a natural state that we all get into from time to time, as is clarity. One of the reasons I'm a runner. I used to run marathons and stuff, but one of the reasons I run regularly is just to clear my mind, just to get into a state
Yeah.
of clarity, and it happens by itself
Yeah.
just when I'm not doing all that other shit. I'm not roiling the waters, and it just sort of settles down and I become clear again. Um,
Makes total sense to me, Doug. And it's funny, I've asked the question to literally thousands of people in audiences, in coaching sessions, in group trainings. I ask them, when do you get your best ideas?
mm-hmm,
And the answers are always the same: when I'm out for a run, when I'm out
mm-hmm,
for a walk, when
yeah,
I'm in the shower, when I'm just dropping off to sleep at night, when I wake up first thing in the morning. And that capacity for innovation, creativity, insight, fresh new ideas, in almost every case, arises when the person's not thinking about it. They're not
right,
running a process on it.
right, right,
They're
right,
doing something else.
right.
That's so they,
And
but this, go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, and what I also love about your work is also, yeah, we both came from like an NLP hypnosis background. We have a lot of things in common regarding that. And my work, a lot of it, User's Guide to Sleight of Mouth, is about an NLP process. But you seem to have come up with a whole different way of thinking about clarity and perception and the mind, and these different segments. Could you describe that a little bit? Like it's almost like you just redefined Freudian ego, super ego, id sort of stuff. But you've got like the I don't even remember. I'm afraid, but I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. There's the mind, and then there's the intuition, I think it was, and then
Well,
insight.
how I see it is very sim. I'll start from where I see it now, and then we'll take it from there, because
Okay.
it's the the nature of our perception is such a strange and counterintuitive thing. So my it looks to me, Doug, like the two most valuable things a person can discover are: number one, how experience is created, and number two, who they really are. So starting with number
Okay.
one, how
Go for it.
experience is created.
Yeah.
How experience is created is, it seems to me, and it seems to most people I meet, like we're looking out through our eyes, like little windows in our head
Mm-hmm.
at a
Mm-hmm.
world out there. But as
Yep.
you'll know, that's not actually what's going on. What's going on is data is pouring in through our senses. And then our deeper neurophysiological and uh, uh, psychological processes are going, what must be out there for me to be receiving this information? Out there in space, out there
Mm-hmm.
in the body, out there in the personality, out there in the future, out there in the past. And then our deeper neurophysiological processes create a guess at the world that we're living in. And that guessing process is happening all the time, real time. And so, in a very real way, each one of us is walking around in a 3D hallucination,
Mm-hmm.
albeit a relatively well controlled hallucination if we're not suffering from
Right.
schizophrenia or psychosis.
Right. All
But
right.
yeah, we're each walking around in a controlled hallucination. And the fact that we've made it to adulthood means there's a relatively good fit and match between whatever the world's quote unquote really like and the controlled hallucination that we're generating. But such is the power of our perceptual abilities that it genuinely seems when we think about the future or the past or what other people are thinking about us or what we're like as a person, it genuinely seems like we're interacting with reality rather than with a hallucination. And so, what I find with a lot of my coaching clients is a huge percentage of the challenges that and obstacles that get in their way get solved the moment they start to realize the nature of their perceptual processes, and specifically to realize that the feeling states that they're experiencing are letting them know about their perceptual processes, not
Mm-hmm.
about reality.
Yeah.
And that's a game changer for a lot of people. Like the fact that we're living in the experience of what I refer to as the principle of thought taking
Right. So,
form in the
so
moment.
you've got three principles, as I recall. There's thought,
Yeah,
consciousness, and mind.
mind. Yeah, and these were first articulated by a guy called Sidney Banks, who was a Scottish welder living on the west coast of Canada. And he had one of those game-changing insights where he suddenly insightfully realized the nature of thought
Huh.
and spent 3 days just realizing like that all his ideas about himself and the world had just been these hallucinations.
Wow.
And uh, and then on the third day he realized the second thing I mentioned, which is who we really are. And it was a life-changing experience. Like the work I'm doing today tracks back to those insights that he had.
Hmm.
um, and so, yeah, thought is these words, thought, mind, and consciousness. These are just metaphors for our perceptual processes, right? Like we're living in the experience. Like it's kind of, to me, it's pretty wild, Doug. That and the neuroscientists back this up, that our moment to moment experience is being generated from within, even the bits that look like they're out there. I'm not saying there isn't an out there, by the way. It's just our experience of all of it is being generated from within. And that's to really, really grok that, that's a game changer. Like I listen to, funnily enough, I listen to many people talking about the mind and that sort of thing, but they haven't quite glimpsed that we're walking around in a controlled hallucination. So
But that's,
that.
it's an interesting thing though, because as you said, there is an out there. What
Well,
sometimes what
maybe we could get into a conversation about that.
well, we're in a
Uh,
conversation. But hold on a
the
second, because let me stop it, because I'm in charge of this conversation. Yeah, I think that's my hallucination anyway. Um, I'd like to, I once had a girlfriend that said, "I'm so glad I created you." It's like, you didn't create me. Mom and dad had a lot to do with that, and so did I for over the years. But I tell people sometimes that if you really think that you're creating your own reality, then rearrange your furniture and then walk around at night with just barefoot. Just because your furniture is going to tell you differently than what
Sure,
you hallucinate that it is.
but I'm saying something subtly but profoundly different, Doug. I'm
Okay,
saying that each of us in each moment is creating our experience of reality.
right. No,
So we're
yes.
walking around in an internally generated experience. And the degree to which that's a good fit and match with whatever's out there, we'll
Hmm.
get feedback about
Yeah,
that.
right, exactly.
The open manhole doesn't care whether it's in our perceptual reality or not. If we step onto it, we're going down the manhole, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, but I'm saying just the simple fact that our experience of the present moment, our surroundings, our past, our future is being
Right.
generated real time
Yeah,
in
yeah.
this spot second. That's actually a profound, and that our feeling states are giving us information about that.
Right. And that's also leading to your concept of the inside out
Yeah.
way of, yeah, go ahead.
Well, that our experience is being created from the inside out. And it
Yeah,
genuinely seems like our feelings are. Yeah, I give you an example. You work with people around public speaking, right?
I
So
do.
I was working with a client once doing a demonstration in front of a group, and they had a like a TED talk coming up in 3 weeks, and they
Hmm.
were freaking out about it. And as each day got closer, they were getting more and more tense and freaked out and that sort of thing. So I asked them, where does it seem to you like your experience is coming from? And they said, well, from the TED talk. So in their perceptual experience, there was they were responding to this future event that didn't exist,
Right.
not a real thing, but they were responding to it as though it was an actual thing. And my what I said to them was 0% of your experience is coming from the TED talk. 100% of your experience is coming from within. Now, I'll give you a simple example of this.
Okay.
Little kids are renowned for liking teddy bears or security blankets as transitional objects. Now, it seems to the little kid like their feelings of security and well being and peace are coming
Are
from the
coming
teddy
from the,
bear or the
yeah.
blanket. But 100% of those feelings are coming from their perceptual systems. Zero is coming from the teddy bear or the blanket. And we understand that as adults.
Hmm.
But then as adults, we think X amount of our experience is coming from our bank balance or our job or the government or the future or the past or what we're like as a person, when actually 100% of it's coming from within. And that distortion, the belief
Hmm.
that it's
Hmm.
coming from somewhere other than within, is the thing that causes a huge percentage of the problems.
Yeah, I get that. And that when a person like the welder in Canada from Scotland has these insights, these moments of clarity, if you will, and they get this insight about things. It's that insight that's really the game changer. It's not the
Bingo.
information. It's not those things that are coming from outside ourselves, but it's having that when all that muddy water settles down and you get the clear water, clear perception, and the insights come through. Insight is more important than information.
Yeah, 100%. And those insights, we all get them. We may not get them to the degree that a Sydney Banks or um, a Pythagoras or the people throughout history
Yeah.
have had very well known insights. But each one of us is connected to that source of insight, and it's guided us in countless ways
Hmm.
throughout
Hmm.
our lives. Like I'll ask all kinds of people, what are some of the insights and realizations you've had that have made a big difference in your life? And everyone's got them. Everyone's had those
Sure.
moments when
Oh
they
yeah.
didn't know what to do, and then so my assertion is that that's an innate capacity that's there in
Cool.
it.
And you've also talked in your book about a thing I like the term is psychological immune system.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a little bit about that and how perhaps we can, bolster our psychological immune system? Because I think we kind of need to from time to time, build that resilience and, have our hallucination be more functional, that more
Yeah.
closely match what's out there really and help us to, gain. And you also have a principle, I think, if I recall correctly, I'm so sorry, but it just popped in. Toxic goals versus, is that right?
Yeah.
Toxic goals?
Toxic goals versus authentic desires.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, thank you.
So, so let's talk about the psychological immune system first, which is a
Okay.
metaphor, right? But the we're all used to the idea that we have a physical immune system. And the physical immune
Mm,
system, if you get like most of the cuts, bruises, and scratches that each of us have had in our lives have been healed without us doing anything, without us even knowing we had them, right? Like
right, right.
even a scratch triggers a wound healing cascade.
Sure.
But what we haven't got used to is the fact that our psychology is an expression of that same natural intelligence, right? And that we have a psychological immune system as well. So, for instance, kind of interesting, there's a book, I've got it here. It's by Marilyn Bowman called Individual Differences in Post-Traumatic Response, Problems with the Adversity Distress Connection. So she did a meta-analysis of all the research at the time that she wrote the book on
Mm-hmm.
PTSD. And there's a belief in our society that there's a kind of dose impact relationship between toxic events and the experience of trauma, the experience
Mm-hmm.
of PTSD. But what she found is there's no causal connection. So there will be people who experience extremely toxic events and have no traumatic response whatsoever. There will be other people who just hear about a toxic event and have a profound PTSD response.
Right.
In something like 90% of toxic event situations, people make a full recovery within 3 months. And so the experience of trauma is actually in a minority of cases. And
Mm-hmm.
that's not in any way to downplay the negative effects that trauma can have in people's
Sure.
lives.
No, of course.
Uh,
Yeah. If you will, I just want to say this real quickly. Dr. Ron Rudin, in his work about the havening techniques, believes that there are four elements that need to take place for a person to get fully, encoded as a trauma. That one is that there is an event that takes place, but then two, there's a meaning that the person gives to it. That okay, this means I'm going to die, or this means I'm going to lose my place in society, or there's some meaning attached to it.
yeah,
Um, and then there's a third thing, which is a sense of inescapability, which I can't get away from this thing. It's got me, I can't get away. That sense of inescapability. But the fourth one is what we're talking about here, just a previous existing landscape of the brain. So the person might be very vulnerable, and so the same thing happens as a person with a resilience landscape. They have no problem with it. It was a bad day. They'll
yeah,
forget about it in 3 weeks. But the person with a vulnerable landscape, those all four elements are there, they're going to get encoded as a trauma. And so those
yeah.
persons will have those challenges.
I hadn't come across that, but that really makes sense to me, Doug. And I'll go one step further with it. You don't even need the toxic event. So I was talking
Well,
with
you
a
don't have
neighbor.
to have the exact, you don't experience it, but if you hear about it, I mean, there has to be
Yeah,
something that you say that's the thing. Yeah.
yeah.
So a lot,
So
yeah.
I was talking to a neighbor of mine who was working in restorative justice, and I was telling him about what I do, and he said, "Oh yeah, one of the young people he was working with got stabbed, and his younger brother, who wasn't there, heard about it and
Right.
got a trauma response."
Right. Yeah. Oh,
So
exactly.
that's the power of thought.
Yeah.
Our ability to create
Yeah.
perceptual realities and experience them as real is so powerful
Yeah.
that it can have incredible effects. So
Exactly.
my assertion, Doug, is that our psychology has the same natural intelligence in it as our physical immune system,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that human beings actually have a built-in propensity to come back to clarity, balance, and that sort of thing. So what gets in the way of it? Well, the thing that gets in the way of it is the mistaken belief that in the mistaken belief in two things. Number one, that our experience is coming from outside of us.
Okay.
By not knowing that we're generating our experience from within, that can cause people a lot of challenges. But the other, and it could cause me a lot of challenges because it's a very slippery fish. I get
No,
caught
for
up in it
sure.
regularly.
Oh, yeah,
But
definitely.
the other thing that people overlook is who they really are. So there's a fascinating experiment that people can look up on YouTube. It's called the Rouge test. And what they found was that up until about 18 months of age, if
Mm-hmm.
they put a child in front of a mirror, the child doesn't recognize themselves in a mirror. Okay. And it's
Yeah.
only around 18 months that they make the connection. They go, oh, that third person image of myself, that's me. And
Mm.
so we talk about self image, right? But your self image isn't who you really are. Your self image is an image of you from a distance, it's a third party perspective
Hmm.
on who you are. Now, that third party perspective is useful for social reasons. It's valuable to be able
Mm-hmm.
to have an understanding of how you relate to your social group, and there are all kinds of other things that make a self-image a useful tool, but it's not who you really are. And the fact of the matter is, who we really are is far more resilient, capable, resourceful than our ideas of ourselves
Hmm.
are. Now, I'm not saying that if someone comes into my office and hits me with a chainsaw, that won't be harmful. Obviously, tissue is very responsive to the physical world, but who we really are is not made of tissue. Who we really are is the well, I'll tell you, this is my take on it, which is
Okay.
unprovable. There's a quote by Teilhard de Chardin that I like to bastardize. It goes like this. It goes, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're one spiritual being having 8 billion human experiences.
Hmm.
And who you really are is that one spiritual being. Who you really are is the consciousness behind life. And so most of the, you mentioned mindfulness techniques, most of the meditation schools are endeavoring to guide people into an experience of that consciousness that's there
Yeah.
within everybody. The
Cool.
what I'm suggesting is the more we identify with
Mhm.
our self-image, the more at the mercy of everything from aging to social status to all the things that happen in a human life. The more we're identified with that image, the more the more troubles in the post, because no one's getting out alive,
Yeah.
as far as I know. Whereas the
So,
more identified we are with that consciousness within, the more tapped in we are to that source of resilience, confidence, peace, creativity,
yeah.
clarity, uh,
Nice.
so on.
It's fascinating. Really, really interesting, Jamie. Thank you so much for this. Um, I'm just remembering a show I saw years ago. And by the way, I bastardized that quote by Desjardins just yesterday.
Nice. Small
I,
world.
mine was much more bastardized, but it's still effective. Anyway, I should probably find out the actual quote someday. I don't even know who. I didn't even know he was the originator of the quote. I think I
He,
said,
he was
you
a
know,
he was a cleric some time ago, I believe.
that's a good one. Anyway, what I was saying is that there was a show on public broadcasting here in New York many years ago. I think it might have been of British origin. I'm not sure, but it was called The Brain, and I think that's right. Anyway, no, 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 no. This is a different show. This is a show called How We Got to Today, or How We Got
Uh,
to Now. How We Got to Now. It's a fascinating show. It's a guy who says, little things like our phones, as an example. It's because there's glass here, and clear glass was an innovation up till a certain. You know this?
Matt, no, but I mean, just I look around the world and I see all the things that had to be created in order for us to have the world we have today. It blows my
Yeah,
mind.
yeah. It is mind blowing. But
Yeah.
clear glass was an innovation that took place 500 years ago. I don't know, something like that. I'm not sure exactly the time, but in Italy, at one point or another, the king of Italy, I don't know, declared that all the glass blowers should be in one spot. We don't want them just muddying up the neighborhood. Put them over there. So they put all the glass blowers
With their
in.
ovens and their big
Right,
lungs.
yeah. It makes too much noise, too much smut. Anyway, so they put them all together. And so then they started talking with each other. So they started interacting, and these different glassblowers started sharing their
Mm.
innovations. And one of them threw some, I don't know, potash in the mix or something like that and came up with clear glass, which up to that point hadn't really existed. They had yellowish glass, they had red glasses, things that was decorative stuff, but they made clear glass. And it was
Wow.
like, whoa, this is weird. What can we do with this? So they started making things like lenses, right? And they did things like, oh, whoa, oh my God, I can see something very tiny as a very big thing now. So they did microscopes. They took telescopes and they saw, oh my God, there's planets out there. Look at that. Would you? And they started increasing the amount of knowledge. People like you are wearing glasses. There were people who didn't wear glasses back then because they didn't exist. So they were
They just
just
went around
blind.
doing this.
They just did this. I see you clearly. No, but also they invented the mirror. and people started seeing themselves for the first time.
Wow.
And so that was, they said, part of the time there, what the Renaissance began, because people started having this self-image thing
Mm.
that they hadn't had before. So they're seeing themselves from a different perspective than they ever had done before. And so suddenly they think differently, they see things differently. They're getting all this different information from the telescopes and the microscopes, and it just changed who we are.
It makes total sense to me. And we're having the 21st century version of that with mad things like Instagram and filters and all
That's
that
where I
stuff.
was just going, is that
Wow.
it's like gone too far now. It's like we're never without it. You know, when mirrors was it, right? We'd see a mirror when we decided to go look in the mirror, or we'd go look in the mirror to see how's this shirt look or whatever. But it's like once an hour maybe.
Yeah.
But now it's like constantly, and we're seeing our self images, seeing other people's self images, and it's like, oh, their SML self image is better than my self image, and I better, get some nips and tucks and do shit because I'm just not good enough anymore. All this stuff is happening that is messing with people's realities, their hallucinations of what reality is, and
For
the
sure.
clarity is not clear.
Well, and,
Who?
and this is it. It seems to me, Doug, that it's the most natural thing in the world for us to relate to our experience as though it's coming from out there because
Mm,
that's how it looks. It
yeah.
genuinely seems like that. And it's the most natural thing in the world for us to relate to our self image as though that's who we really are because we've spent years and decades thinking about that. And
So
like if you,
how do we counteract that? What do we do about
yeah,
this, Jamie Smart?
well, here's my take on it. It's a three-step process. Step
Okay.
one,
Yeah.
you got to decide whether I'm on to something or not. Because if you decide, no, he's just a guy with a funny voice raving about stuff with glasses, then you don't have to take any further action. But if you decide that I'm on to something with this,
Uh-huh.
then
Uh-huh.
step two, you need to make it a priority because the thing is, we've been schooled for an outside in world. And everything from our media to our parents to our friends to our TV shows to everything reinforces that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you got to decide, okay, it's a priority to see something that's a more like how I think of it, Doug, for at different stages in human history. Like people used to believe that the sun went round the earth. And they
Mm-hmm.
had a point, like it looks like it does, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And when people first said, actually, it works the other way around, no one believed them. It seemed like they were foolish. I'll tell you, here's a mad one. When in 1846, a guy called Ignaz Semmelweis had an insight and realized that germs were causing infection. And
Mm.
so he went telling everyone about it. Like 40 years later, uh, President Garfield of the US was attending the World's Fair in like 1880, 1881, and an assassin shot him twice. Now, he wasn't killed by the bullets, and he was the American president, so he had great doctors. But in 1881, like 35 years after Semmelweis had discovered germs, the doctors still thought germs were BS. And so they
Mm.
stuck their fingers into the wounds and pulled his
Mm.
bullets out. Garfield died 11 weeks later cause of infection caused by his doctors.
Hmm.
So Semmelweis saw something that was closer to reality than the prevailing understanding, but it took another 60 years before the prevailing understanding started to
Oh,
shift. And
yeah.
we live in that world today. I've had numerous operations, and I probably wouldn't be alive today if it wasn't for people understanding germ theory.
Right.
My great granny, if you had a cold, she'd open the windows to let out the bad air, right?
Sure.
Not
No, yeah.
understanding
No,
how.
that's true. I mean, a lot of I used to work in a hospital, Columbia Presbyterian Hospital, which was built on a bluff north of New York City because at the time it was built, it was farmland and they wanted clean air. So they wanted it high up so they could get the air through. And that's how they did medicine. George Washington, our first president, died of bloodletting because
Right.
they thought that was the best thing. So he had a fever. They said, "Oh, he's got too much blood in him, so let's take a pint."
Yeah.
And basically they've cured the fever. But-
Yeah. Good news, bad news. So number one, decide whether I'm on to something or not. Number
okay.
two, make it a priority because we live in a world which innocently is
Mm,
built in some ways to indoctrinate us into believing it works in a way that it doesn't actually work.
yeah.
And then number three, uh, having made it a priority, uh, just start exploring. Start exploring. So I've got, my book Clarity, my book Results are a place to start. I strongly recommend the videos of Sydney Banks. You can find them free on YouTube or on
Okay.
his website. Um, and just explore. I've got tons of free materials on my website. And because this is an entire worldview, you could say, and my
Mm-hmm.
assertion, like, don't take my word for any of this.
Okay.
I'm asserting that this is to psychology what the discovery of germs was to medicine. Feel free to prove me wrong. I'm fine with that. But do your own research. Find out for yourself. If it resonates, spend some time with it. Because what I can tell you is, personally, my quality of life has improved profoundly since exploring this. And I see it with clients all the time, people whose experience of life has transformed significantly through their own insights into this understanding. You learn about it insightfully. And the thing that strikes me, Doug, is that we're heading into, like, it's so interesting, right? With the transformation of the world that we're seeing with AI and robotics and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing. I think we could well be heading for a world where in maybe 7 to 10 years' time, we have an incredible world of abundance for everyone, like amazing quality of life for everyone. But it seems to me the time between here and there is going to be pretty sketchy. It's sort of like an Indiana Jones rope bridge between
Sure.
between here and there. And so I just think more than ever, we're going to need to tap into that inner resilience and clarity and peace of mind and love and connection and kindness more than ever in the world. So I encourage people to do whatever makes sense to them. To
So if they want to find out more about you and your work, they go to jamiesmart.com.
Yeah, jamiesmart.com, or my books are up on Amazon, and I'm on the podcast network. If they people who listen to you will enjoy podcasts and audiobooks, I imagine. So
Yeah.
I've got the Get Clarity podcast and the Thriving Coaches podcast, and my
Okay.
books are on Audible.
Nice. Did you record them yourself?
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you?
Funnily enough, I love recording audiobooks. I always loved it when, if I listened to a book, that it was the author that read it and put in their own asides and that sort of thing. So that's how I did it.
Okay. I'm thinking about doing my own books as audios and looking at different possibilities for doing it. Um, anyway, that's a different question. If there were one thing that people could say, okay, I've listened to this podcast and now I can begin to get some clarity by doing this one process. What could people do like now to start getting some clarity? Just this very
You
moment.
know, a, a friend of mine and colleague of ours, a guy called Michael Watson, who's a great
I know. Yeah.
Ericksonian hypnotist. You know,
Sure.
Michael,
Oh yeah. Of course.
he once said to me, he said, somewhere in there in you is a being greater than you can imagine seeking expression in this world. And so, my invitation to everyone would be to open to the possibility that there's a source of resilience, clarity, insight, peace, and beauty in you that is capable of far, far more than you think, and has gifts beyond measure for you in your life. And that's there. And any step that makes sense to you in terms of just exploring this, because it's an understanding, Doug. It's not an approach or a method, even though there are approaches and methods for working with it. It's an understanding. So anything you can do to just take a step towards understanding this a little more for yourself would be a step in the right direction. Even if it's just to reflect on that metaphor of what I call the teddy bear factor. We know that a little child hangs onto their teddy bear, their security blanket, and they get a beautiful feeling. But we know as adults that that's all coming from the child, even though they're attributing it to the teddy bear. Like, what if that's true for all of the stuff that you're idealizing in your life?
Okay.
Maybe reflect on that.
All right. Thank you very much. So, gosh, Jamie, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insight with us today. It's clear, no pun intended, that your work is helping people. I mean, you've worked with so many people for over the years, and you're really helping people reconnect with their inner clarity and potential in powerful ways. So thank you. And to all of our listeners, if you found this conversation valuable, please take a moment to like it, to subscribe, leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. It really helps us reach more coaches and change makers just like you. So until next time, keep exploring the essential coaching skills that make transformation possible. And once again, Jamie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Doug. It's been a huge pleasure. Really appreciate you inviting me.
This has been the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure seeing you again. Hope to see you again real soon. Come back next week when we have another gripping and exciting episode of the Essential Coaching Skills Podcast. And if you want to, you can find out more about us, each and every one of us, at essentialcoachingskills.com. Thanks.